Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for our final presentation of the day. Our speaker today is Professor Raj Khosla from Colorado University. He's a globally recognized authority on precision agriculture. He's been a pioneer in precision agriculture and has been around really since its inception. He was the founder and past president of the International Society of Precision Agriculture. Professor Khosla works on helping farmers use better decision-making models. Most recently, his laboratory, in collaboration with two other institutions, are developing the next generation of soil moisture and soil nitrate sensors that are inexpensive, passive, small, and biodegradable. So with that very quick introduction, I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Khosla, and he will take it from here.
Thank you so much, Denise. I want to thank the organizing committee for inviting me to share the work that my lab and I have been doing at Colorado State University now for the past 20 some years. And I am delighted and honored to be giving a talk to one of the prominent conferences in North America. And as you can see on my screen, I'm going to talk about the future of digital agriculture. And I'm going to take you into the future and share my vision with you how I think farming is slated to change and how it will mandate us to learn not only farming the land, but farming the data, if you may. All right. So let me start with the year 1983. 1983 was a landmark event in the history of humankind. Why do I say that? I think many of you may recall what transpired in 1983. It was then global positioning systems became available for public use, right? Since then, it has totally changed our ability to navigate on roads. And do farming very differently, as we all know. However, if you, as some of you may remember, in mid-80s, the signals were encrypted. Okay, and now being the GPS signals being encrypted, that means the accuracy of our GPS signals were about 100 meters or of size of a football field. That wasn't good enough for agricultural applications, okay? It took about 2 decades before that encryption was removed from global positioning system satellites. And that's when the accuracy became exceptionally good. So you can use GPS anywhere on the planet from that point onwards with an accuracy of 15 meters. Now, that was a game changer, because it allowed agriculture to become very innovative. Some of you may recall this schematic that was put together in mid-80s by Potash and Phosphate Institute, which later on was called as IPNI. And it started with a question: what if? What if GPS become available for agriculture? And so the founders of precision agriculture, or what's referred to as digital agriculture today, envisioned that there will be a point in time when no matter what we are doing in our farm fields, will be connected to GPS satellites. Now today, this is reality, whether we're scouting our fields or planting our fields or fertilizing or harvesting, we are, and our equipment, implements are connected to the location-based information. They also wanted to highlight that going forward, and that's why you see these grids on this screen, that it will become very important that as we embrace location-based agriculture, that we give importance to each and every part of the field based on its productivity potential, based on the inherent properties, whether it's related to soil, environment, climate, or crops. Now, there was something else that founders of digital agriculture have cautioned us. They said that once we start engaging ourselves in location-based agriculture, we will embark upon a new journey. And that new journey is collection of data. That as more and more farmers start practicing location-based agriculture, or what's also called as site-specific agriculture, you will start to collect different data layers. For example, past year yields, or if you have performed soil tests, nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, as many elements that you're collecting, or digital layers for soil survey or soil parameters in your field. And that's precisely where we are today. As we have learned to practice precision agriculture in the last couple, 3 decades, now we are at a point that we are embarking upon collecting numerous data layers, which are field specific, site specific, location specific, year specific. So there is a spatial component as well as temporal component. And this is precisely what I mean when I say farming with data. Because we know how to farm the land. What we don't know is how to farm with data, the data that we have been collecting from our fields, from our crops, from our soil every year. So how to farm the land? This is something that we have done it for centuries. We know that. We know how to farm the land. In fact, since we're talking about North America, I think it is not an exaggeration to say that we are in one of the most productive regions on the planet. Let's take a look. I got this data from USDA. If you look at how agriculture has progressed in the last 150 years in North America, and I picked up these prominent 5 or 6 commodities, you will notice that we have come a long ways in the last 100+ years. And particularly, if you were to focus on the last 50-some years, you'll realize that we have made dramatic progress in terms of our ability to produce more from the same unit of land. We have learned how could we continue to produce more and more and more every year. This is primarily because of a number of things that we have worked on and perfected, such as machinery, technology, biotechnology, improved genetics, improved traits, ability to have a very highly efficient nutrient management, pest management, ability which continues to improve on a week-by-week basis as we go into the future, ability to understand and forecast weather. So we have come a long ways if we look back in the last 100 or so years. So I think it is not an exaggeration at all to state we know how to farm the land. I hope we all have a consensus in making that statement. So what is different today? Well, we need to learn how to farm the land with data. That is new. The data that we are collecting is only as good as if we know how to translate this data into information using robust algorithms into an improved decision-making process. That's new, and we need to learn how to do that. Another challenge, we need to learn how do we produce more with less. On the US side, many of you must have seen and read Agriculture Innovation Agenda put forward by Secretary of Agriculture. In that Agriculture Innovation Agenda, it talks about that in the next couple, 3 decades, how do we reduce our agricultural footprint or our inputs by almost 50% and continue to increase our production by almost 50%? How do we do that? So we need to learn how to produce more with less. And how would we do that? I think this is where digital agriculture has a major role to play. For example, if you look at the 5 R's that I've talked in my papers, in my talk, in my chapters, by applying the right input at the right time, at the right place, in the right amount, and in the right manner. When we bring these 5 R's together, that's when we have the capability to manage the spatial and temporal changes that we have seen for decades, if not centuries, in our farm field. So these are the 5 R's of digital agriculture: right input, time, place, amount, and manner. Now, for us to practice these 5 R aspects of digital agriculture, that require special set of skills. So let's take a look how digital agriculture has changed in the last 30 or so years since the inception of global positioning system when it became available for civilian uses. So just like you have seen the waves of innovation, so what I have on the y-axis is the innovation that has happened in digital agriculture. And on the x-axis, I have the timeline since the birth of digital agriculture. So in the very first wave of digital agriculture, as you can rightly think, there was a tremendous amount of focus on global positioning systems. Then came the yield monitor. And immediately after that was our ability to differentially apply inputs. And primarily in those days, the focus was on fertilizer application. That lasted about 15 or 20 years. In the second wave, when more high resolution GPS signals was enabled for civilian uses, i.e. the encryption was removed, then the focus all of a sudden shifted to auto guidance. Ability to drive a tractor without really touching the steering wheel. Could you imagine that 30 years back? Or proximal sensing. Today we have more sensors that we can either hold it in our hand or mount it on our tractor. Likewise for soil sensing, remote sensing, either satellite-based, airborne-based, or drone-based, and improvement in variable rate technology. We have gone from boom width to sectional boom, and more recently to nozzle level applications, right? And then at the bottom of the second wave, I mentioned robotics. And you're saying, well, robotics are not commercially available. Well, they are. And one can argue whether the second wave is over or not, but let me give you an example why I've listed robotics as a part of the second wave of digital agriculture. Many of you may remember this press release from 3 years back. University of Harper Adams in the United Kingdom made headlines because they adopted 1 hectare of land where they went totally automated, meaning right from planting all the way to harvest, as they call it, hands-free hectare. They prepared the land, planted the land, performed all operations, and harvested the barley crop without any human intervention in the field. Now, you and I both know this is one of the most expensive barley that was produced on the planet. And you can only imagine how expensive the beer would be if we were to translate or brew this barley into beer. But lighter side aside, this has already been shown 3 years back that this can be done. It's a matter of time that it becomes commercially viable, and logically starting with high value crops and then trickling it down to row crops. But this has already transpired. So what is the next or the current wave of digital agriculture look like? It has elements of big data. Now, data alone doesn't tell you anything unless you perform robust algorithms or analytics. Along with that, we're slated, and I'm going to talk more about that, to have a suite of wireless sensor network. And when you establish a suite of wireless sensor network, what you have just done, you have put together an IoT or Internet of Things. There are different terminology being used, agriculture technology or ag tech or agri-tech. And I like calling it data farming, because it is the data that will allow us to translate into information using algorithms, which will allow farmers and farming communities to make better decisions, to practice those 5 R's, the right input, time, place, amount, and manner. So farming the data. When we farm the data, it enables us to add value. So digital farming is not only about farming the land, it is also about farming the data, translating data into information, into better decision-making process. Now, this is something that I heard from one of my colleagues in College of Business. What he mentioned to me, that you can only manage what you can measure. And so it becomes very important in data-centric agriculture that we must have the capability to measure. And I'll give you a couple of different examples on that. For example, we have been using yield maps for last couple decades. What we need to do is use the data that we collect from our field, pixel by pixel, for example, in yield map, and translate into a product. For example, here is a profit map analysis for the farmers to be able to see where in the field they're bleeding money and where in the field that they're making money, so that they can position themselves to use the 5R approach and position themselves that how do we optimize our input to maximize our output. That also what's called as evidence-based farming. You have the data, you have the evidence. Now we need to position ourselves. How do we take advantage of this data and make a better decision, either in season or in the next season? And we all know that when we add value to whatever operation that we're engaged in, whether it's agriculture or some other form of business, it fosters adoption. I think it is not an exaggeration to say that agriculture is highly complex. And why do I say that? Because if you're working with a row crop, in a matter of 100 or 120 days, as a farmer, as a practitioner, you have to deal with so many moving parts: weather, fertilizer, livestock, crop, labor, soil, machinery, pest, land, variety, genetics, spatial variability, diseases, equipment. The list goes on and on and on. And the farmer, or as a practitioner, we have very limited time to be able to encompass all the moving parts to make the most useful, beneficial decision. Now, for the common public, who don't necessarily understand the complexity in agriculture, they look at agriculture, and this is what comes to their mind: that you have a good-looking tractor, a large rig, you got GPS now on top of your tractor, and that's how you do agriculture. So what's changing? Well, what's changing here now in digital agriculture, that we are looking at agriculture through the lens of the computer. Now, computer by definition is an iterative machine. It does not take emotions. What it does take is data. And so for us to take advantage of digital agriculture mean we have to embrace a whole network of sensors and sensor technology. It enables you to know how much yield you're getting from where, which part of the field, management zone, electrical conductivity, soil properties, plant population. You can look at performance of your equipment, machinery, how long it is idling, how much it is performing, what's the fuel efficiency, how many hours operators are putting into your farm. This is only a partial list of data that is being collected through the network of sensors. And what then happens is that all of this data has to be stored either on edge computing, meaning at the edge of the farm field, or on cloud computing. that just like when you take a picture on your smartphone or cell phone, that picture is stored onto a cloud so that you can have access to that image at any time. Similarly, your data being stored at the cloud allows you to be connected with the data all the time, 24/7. And it doesn't matter whether you're an Apple person or a Samsung person or whatever platform you're using, it doesn't matter. It's connected to that data. So that's the best part, that data is connected 24/7. Now, imagine yourself standing in the middle of your field, holding a smartphone in one hand and maybe a smart tablet in another hand, looking at the soil health parameters or crop health parameters or crop growth and development. One thing we have noticed that has changed in the last 20 some years, that no matter what you are doing related to farming, that you have connectivity to the location information through the global positioning systems, whether it's your tractor, whether it's your crop, or your phone, or your smart tablet. One intervention that we have seen in the last 10 or so years is the infusion of drones or UAVs. Now, what do? They allow you to quantify changes in your soil properties over time or changes in your crop growth and development over time. In other words, they're collecting more data. They're collecting more data from your field, from your crop canopy. And this is where we need to learn, how do we translate that data by doing data farming into decision-making process. In near future, if you have not already been witnessing this, that we'll be working with sensor and wireless sensor nodes. So this looks like a schematic. Let me show you a real sensor node. So what you see on the left side of your screen is a wireless sensor node. Notice that there's a data logger at about 4 foot height. And then there are 5 cables that are connected to the soil. These are 5 different depths where in this particular farm field, we're collecting soil moisture data for the entire profile. Then there's a cable that goes up. You have a solar panel and you have a telemetry. Now, this is one wireless sensor node, okay? When you have multiple of these within your farm, within your field, that's when you create a wireless sensor network or Internet of Things, in this case, soil moisture. Now, let me give you another real example. This is our field. I'm in Colorado. You all know that we have many center pivot irrigation systems. That's why our fields are circular. And on this particular field, since 2012, I have installed a precision irrigation system that I can control the rate of application of water, how much I want, when I want, and where in the field I want at the nozzle level. So mathematically speaking, I can have 5,400 unique water management zone as it is displayed on your screen. What I don't have is the science. I have the technology. What I don't have is the science to translate into a prescription that will allow me to make the best management decision in terms of water, in this case, how much I want, where I want, when I want. What will it take? What will it take? So remember, I mentioned in one of my slides, we can only manage what we can measure. So in this case, we will have to install close to 20, 30, or 40 soil moisture sensor network in this particular field to enable us know how much soil moisture is in the profile seamlessly throughout the field. Now, I can imagine what you're thinking in your mind, that if each of these sensor nodes costs $2,000, Which farmer on this planet will ever create this kind of wireless sensor network, let alone the logistical challenge of having a farm full of these 10-foot tall posts? I get it, but this is going to change. My lab, and along with a couple other labs, we're working on developing the next generation of soil moisture and soil nitrate sensors. Okay, so these sensors are going to be tiny. Okay, they will have no battery. They are passive. They're sleeping all the time. When you jog them, they wake up for a millisecond, do their thing that they're programmed to do, like in our case, soil moisture and soil nitrate, and immediately go back to the field, go back to sleep. And so you can imagine, depending on the size of your field, taking these sensors in your hand, they're tiny, and just spreading them randomly in your field, just like it is shown here. And then you may wonder, what happens after I harvested the crop? You don't need to worry about that. Your entire field is going to look like Internet of Things. These are the locations where your sensors are placed. They have unique identity tags. That's how you know their location and their ID. The reason I said you don't have to worry about going back to the field and collecting them, this is one of our prototype that looks like a golf tee that you can walk over and just shove it with your feet in the soil. That after 200 or so many days, they start to disintegrate. These sensors are biodegradable. And within a year cycle, they're totally gone. They're totally dissolved in the field. So you don't have to worry about going back to the field and collecting those sensors back. They are degradable sensors. I'm very proud. This is the name of the project that's funded by a federal agency called Precision Agriculture, using networks of degradable analytical sensors. And our target cost of each sensor, we said less than $1. We're hopeful that when we mass produce it, the cost of the sensor may be in few pennies, which then empowers us to distribute them in our fields, in every field, in large numbers, so that we can collect spatially dependent data set. In fact, some of my colleagues are working on in-planta sensors. These are sensors that you can either spray on the plant crop canopy or apply them on the plant. And that gives you a parameter of interest directly from crop. So you can monitor crop health just like you monitor soil health and soil activity. In fact, this looks so futuristic. I think as I was reading multiple reports, this concept was proposed by NASA 20 years back, where they had done an experimentation. They have embedded a sensor, plant sensor, in the plant, and connected the output of those sensors a cell phone. You get a text message from the plant when it crosses a certain threshold asking you, water me or apply nutrient. How about that? So the concept is not new, but realizing that concept into a commercial venture so that it's commercially viable and available and accessible for our daily use in agriculture, that aspect is new. So if you look at the bottom of this slide, where you have the plants that are growing, I'm showing you that we have to learn as we go forward in the world of digital agriculture, looking at plants and soils, not just as plant and soil, but as numbers or data. How high my plant height is, what's the row spacing, what's the inter-row spacing, number of plants, planting geometry, greenness of the leaf, plant health, soil health, the parameters of interest. And so what is it that we're trying to do? We're trying to understand variability in soil properties and soil health, optimize our input, understand the changing weather, collect a lot of data, use the best technology that's available, to manage our crop. That's precisely what we're trying to do in the world of farming the data. Here's just one example before I wrap up my presentation. This is our experimental field, center pivot irrigation system. Every year, we collect numerous data layers. We start our pre-planting season by measuring electrical conductivity of the soil. Then my crew goes out, performs soil sampling, and then throughout the growing season, we measure soil moisture content, just the way I was explaining to you before, multiple times during the growing season. You can collect it every 30 minutes to once every week, right before you're applying water. Of course, we fly drones and acquire numerous multispectral imagery to look at something that our bare naked eye cannot look at. Of course, every operation that we're performing in the field is being quantified. Now, could you imagine this data stack? This is just one field, one growing season, one crop. And of course, this is an experimental field, and we're trying to understand what data layers are pertinent for us to be recording them, measuring them, so that it allows us to make better management. And this is just a tiny glimpse of the big data in agriculture. So what will it take for us to translate this data into information, into better decision? We have no choice but to farm this data, and hence the term farming with data. But we're not there yet. There are many things that we don't know. For example, when you look at these data stack, 30-some different unique data layers collected from one field, one crop, one growing season, right now there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of biometrics and statistical computing. For example, we don't really have an understanding right now, what is the relationship between soil moisture and electrical conductivity and NDVI, plant height, plant spacing, grain yield? We don't know that. This is new. We don't even know what should be the weight of each unique data layer. Is soil texture more important than soil moisture? Or is NDVI data layer more important than plant height? What should be the weight of these different data layers so that we can account all these parameters so that we can continue to produce more with less? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Likewise, how do we account for seasonal anomalies, right? Weather happens. And how do we make sure that it's not a fluke? We need to make sure it's robust, it's reproducible, and it's reliable. And finally, does it really make sense to collect all these data layers? Which data layer is the most pertinent one? Which one do I need to focus on? And so if you envision at some point of time when these sensor network or Internet of Wireless Sensor Network become online, just like what I showed you in our experimental field, we collect a lot of those soil and crop health parameters. Along with that, we bring in data from other factors such as weather, meteorological data, environmental data, drainage, and so forth. Bring the two together, then use machine learning and artificial intelligence algorithm to keep the complexity to ourselves. Okay, the idea is not to baffle the farmer or the practitioner. Keep the complexity to ourselves and come forward with a simple, reliable, and near real-time automated decision-making process. Now, of course, I realize that in this entire model, the practitioner or the farmer will have the ability to override any decision or any prescription produced by a machine learning or artificial intelligence algorithm. The farmer has the final decision. If the farmer doesn't like what the machine is telling you to do, the farmer can easily override that decision. And this is when it translates into an input prescription And as I look into the future, I think this is going to be part of the many tools and technologies that will be available for us to use in field to continue to reduce our footprint, continue to increase our production, be profitable, and do all of that in a sustainable manner. I think this is a goal of high magnitude, but I'm optimistic. Looking at the work that is being done by private partners and land grant institutions and other universities and research institutions, all of North America, in fact, all around the world, I am hopeful that we will get there. With that, I would welcome any questions or comments that you all may have to entertain that at this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khosla. That was excellent. So we do have a number of questions. I'll start with, as mentioned many times before, for many years, connectivity is still a huge barrier to rural geographies. So any thoughts there?
You're exactly right. Rural broadband continues to be a roadblock when we talk about translating digital agriculture into reality. I know I can speak from on the US side, there's a bill in the Congress, which is a very small bill compared to the infrastructural needs. Many private organizations have done studies, how many billions of dollars it will take to totally connect our rural part of the country. But it's a $65 million request to to take the first few steps in enabling that. While we are doing that, I don't think so we should stop collecting data, because at some point of time we will get there, whether that happens in the next 5 years or next 10 years, but rural connectivity will happen. And you will also notice that in this time frame, there's another form of technology that may become available, and that's called edge computing. Meaning you don't necessarily need to rely on uploading all the data onto a cloud because of the limited bandwidth, but you will have robust algorithms and robust tools that you can store that data onto a edge computer, literally edge of the field computer. That's why it's called edge computing. And that will provide you decisions or prescriptions in near real time. But that I recognize that's a major impediment in the current environment.
Okay. So you talked about the different data layers and trying to choose what the importance of each or which ones would be more important. So Matthew asks, what are your top 5 most valuable data layers?
Well, I wish, Matthew, I had a silver bullet for you. What we're doing is, and this is true for any research organization or research laboratory, that we over collect the data layers or pieces of data that we don't necessarily have a use right now, but we don't really know how to harness the value of that particular data and data layer. Something that we have learned based on the focus group meetings that I have done, not only in Colorado, but across the world, I should say, is that farmers like to harness the critical importance of stable data layers. And there's advantage of collecting stable data layers. For example, organic matter. Organic matter is spatially variable within a farm field, but temporally, it's quite stable. It has a very important role in controlling the productivity potential of each and every part of the field, yet it doesn't change over time. So this is something that we strongly believe that has a very important role in production agriculture. Likewise, topography. That's another very important data layer, and it's stable in nature. Topography, unless you change the slope, it's not going to change. Third one, This is something that our farmers have been doing it for the last decade or more. Yield data. I think it is the most widely collected data and highly underused data. We have not been able to take advantage of multiple years of yield data and translating that, understanding the cause and effect relationship or profit analysis map year after year after year for us to enable that better decision-making process. I know you have asked me for 5. I'm not even saying the ones that I've told you are the top 3. I'm saying what I have heard from our farming community, that they like properties of interest that are important to production and they're stable in nature. So that once they invest money into quantifying those important data layers, they don't have to go back every year and spend money to recollect those data layers. I hope that makes sense.
That makes sense. So a slightly different question, and I had similar thoughts earlier. So it's from MC Communications. Matt asked this question: acting on these things can require the right modern equipment. What if that's not something a producer has practical access to? Where can smaller farmers with limited capabilities start in terms of data farming? So to me, I think there's almost 2 questions there. One is just, if I haven't gotten started and I'm a medium to large size farm, how can I get started? And then I think there's a second question of, is there still a role for precision agriculture in smaller farms?
I think the answer to both these questions, and I know they're unique, is yes, absolutely. Something that I'm very passionate about as a professional agronomist myself, a precision agronomist, is something that I coined this term many years back called SIPA, SIPA, which stands for Scale Independent Precision Agriculture. And that means precision agriculture is not only meant for large scale, resource rich farming operations, it is meant for anywhere you have spatial and temporal variability independent of the size of the field. In fact, in one of the papers, I mentioned that for SIPA, or Scale Independent Precision Agriculture, to be successful, we have to challenge ourselves to come up with site-specific, locally adaptive, operationally feasible, economically affordable practices that allow us to take advantage, not necessarily 360 degrees, the whole 9 yards, but pick and choose what works in your environment. I can't come with something that works in Colorado and simply lift it and take to another environment and say, hey, do the same thing. I think that's a total departure from the very concept of precision agriculture. And so I think the challenge is, I travel worldwide. In fact, in 2 weeks from now, I'm giving a keynote at the African Conference on Precision Agriculture. And the focus of my talk is scale independent precision agriculture. If you and I think in North American region that we are resource limited, imagine the farmers who have 1/3 of an acre as their sole source of income, challenging how can we take advantage of digital agriculture. And I think the kind of sensor that I talked about is one step closer. Now, sensors will only give you the data. It will still require equipment or labor or machinery, whether it's complex or small and simple. That will vary from region to region, but it's doable. I have many success stories from all over the world where farmers from Uruguay to Sub-Saharan Africa, India, China, Brazil, Latin America, North America, how they have challenged themselves in realizing what is the most limiting parameter that's holding up their production and efficiency and profitability, and utilize the concept of digital agriculture to make a difference in their production. I know I'm wearing a preaching hat right now at the moment, so sorry about that, but yes, it can be done. Will it be simple? Absolutely not. Will it be painful? Yes. Will this be, will there be growing pains? Absolutely, count on that. But can it be done? Yes, it can be.
Okay, and then we've got two last questions, and then we have to wrap up. Clearly, everybody's very interested, Professor Khosla, so I'll try to pick a good two. Any use for augmented reality? I'll go with that one first. And
yes, there is, and I think, you know, I mentioned just briefly in my presentation that that technology is ahead of science. We have so many technological innovations that are available for agriculture as well today. But do we have science to strike a balance, what technology can deliver versus what science tells us to do? I gave an example of precision pivot, where I have, you know, 300 some nozzle and I can change the rate of water at every nozzle level. Does it even make scientific sense? Forget the economics. Does it even make scientific sense to do that? In terms of augmented reality, if it allows you to evaluate scenarios virtually without risking those in the field, absolutely go for it. No question about it. But in order for you to envision those different scenarios will require a lot of computational mathematics. And so one thing that has not been asked that I really want to mention is we really lack skilled individuals who understand both agriculture and the computation aspect, because we know how to grow or you know, farm the land. What we don't know is farming the data. So looking into literally outside my window from where I'm sitting, we need people who understand the both aspect, and that's a rare commodity. And so universities need to update our curriculum, and that applies to us as well, that brings the new set of challenges to prepare the next generation of our students or professionals to make this into a reality.
sorry, our last question. We've got a couple of people are very interested in the sensors that you chatted about, and they're just wondering what the time frame is before you think those sensors might come to market.
Okay, so that's a very good question. Right now, we have gone through 3 crop cycles of testing and evaluating these sensors, but all in the greenhouse settings. And we are looking at, our hope is that in spring of 2021, we take a handful of these sensors in our farm field to continue to evaluate it. This, if everything goes well in this project line, we should have a product in 2 years time frame. And that would be April of 2022. In fact, one of the requirements of this funding agency is that we not simply develop and test the product and publish some papers, which many of us do, but realize that into a commercial entity. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. My graduate students and postdocs are, you know, keep telling us the numerous challenges that we have to overcome. Ability to read moisture, which can be done. That science has been, you know, around for more than 50 years, but doing it in such a small way, reading it remotely, because this doesn't have a battery, to be able to interrogate this sensor from afar and make sure that the reading is reliable. Make no mistake that the sensors will be precise. They may not be very accurate, but because you will have so many sensors spread out in your field, it'll give you a spatial pattern, right? And that's exactly what we are wanting to do. If I can know the spatial pattern, then I can translate into a decision-making process on a spatial and temporal scale. So, okay. Very good questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Khosla. That was a fantastic presentation. I'm hoping that in maybe in our November 22 conference in Western Canada, we can invite you again so we can get the results of whether or not the sensors are out there.
And I hope that I bring a handful of these sensors, because they will be penny worth, hopefully. And I want to do this, you know, I want to give, you know, a sensor to each of the person, hopefully in live audience, and you know, or in their, you know, portfolio or something, not tell them, and give them a reading, and then ask them to take out the sensor and put them in the water. And so it should show the difference in the soil moisture reading or moisture
All
reading.
right, I am definitely inviting you officially to the November 2022 conference. So
thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So everyone, we're going to have to wrap it up now. Thank you very much, Professor Khosla, for your time today. I will mention to everyone that this is the last session for today. If you can join us tomorrow again at 10 a.m. for John Hartnett's presentation on how innovation is advancing the future of agriculture. Also just wanted to mention that whether you can come in every day, you can log in at any time for the next 10 days to be able to access any of the presentations. If you wanted to watch Professor Khosla's presentation again, you're more than welcome to do so. Your registration gives you access for 10 days after the conference. And for everyone, we really encourage you to participate in tomorrow's networking reception from 5 to 6:30 p.m. sponsored by Canada's Farm Show. We have shared some drink recipes with you because that's important too. Professor Khosla talked about beer at the beginning when he talked about the barley. So whether it's expensive beer, inexpensive beer, or drinks that we've shared, we invite you to join us for the networking reception. We really believe that one of the key values from your registrations with the Virtual Precision Ag Show is the networking opportunities and the ability to chat with people who are as enthusiastic about precision agriculture as everyone who's in attendance today and people like Professor Khosla. So thank you very much, everybody. We will see you tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.